I'm trying to perform some additional experiments with the analog discovery having to do with the noise issue that I discovered earlier. If you watched some of my videos on using the Keithley and doing distortion measurements, you may recall that when I did a measurement of total harmonic distortion plus noise with the analog discovery 2, I found that the figures were quite a bit higher than when I just did a straight THD measurement. So what I have on the screen is a Rigol oscilloscope. This is the DS4000, and what I'm trying to do is to establish a baseline for noise. I have connected this. Initially, I'm going to do this both with the original analog discovery, sometimes may call that the analog discovery 1, and I'm also going to do it with the analog discovery 2 in a variety of contexts. Now, back when I was doing these sorts of things professionally, I would have done this in a screen room with all sorts of protections against extraneous noise and such things. I don't have easy access to those sorts of facilities anymore. I'm retired. So what I'm trying to do is eliminate as much noise as possible. So one of the things that I have done so far is I have connected up the analog discovery and started up the waveform software, but without enabling any of the devices. I have connected up my video monitor and obviously turned on the camera, or you wouldn't be seeing this. And I did each of those steps in sequence to see if this noise level would increase. Now, what I've also done is I've turned on and off lights in the room and so on. So I've tried all of those sorts of noise sources. Frankly, the noise level has remained relatively constant no matter what devices I turn on. There is some sensitivity to the placement of the analog discovery on the desk. When I move this around on the desk, I can get a 0.1, 0.2 millivolt or 100 to 200 microvolt difference in the RMS measurement. And so the first thing I'm going to do is write down this noise level that I find on the scope right now, which is about 2.5 millivolts RMS. And then I'm going to go from there. Now I've turned on the wave generator of the analog discovery, and this is once again the analog discovery 1. I'll let you know when I change. And now what I'm going to do is hook it up to the Keithley and do the same THD and THD plus noise measurements. Now what I'm using is a 10 kilohertz signal, and I'm doing that because at some point what I would like to do is do some spectral analysis using the Rigol DSA-815 that you see there, and it'll only go down to 9 kilohertz. So I'm going to use 10 kilohertz for all of these measurements just so that it's within the range of the instruments I have. Now if I had a vector signal analyzer that went down to 100 hertz or kilohertz or something like that, I probably would use that instead. But once again, as I say, I'm just trying to stay within the realm of an informed experimenter given the equipment that I have available to me. So let me set up the THD measurement on the Keithley and see if we're still getting about the same thing we got earlier. You may recall that I was earlier getting a THD plus noise figure on the analog discovery 2 that was about 10 times the THD figure. In other words, when you include noise, the measurement would go from about 0.003 to about 0.03, or an increase of 10 to 1. I'm getting the same thing now. So the next thing I'm going to do is to see if I can figure out where that additional noise is coming from. I've jumped ahead a little bit to looking at the spectrum of a 10 kilohertz sine wave. In this case, I'm also using the Analog Discovery 2. You'll notice here is the 10 kilohertz fundamental. This is the second and third harmonic. And then in the table below, it's called a marker table, you may notice that it shows that at 10 kilohertz, the fundamental, we're about -2 dBm. At 20 kilohertz, the second harmonic, we're about -50 dBm. And at 30 kilohertz, we're about -60 or 59, 60 dBm. Now, these numbers are almost identical to the numbers I got off the Analog Discovery 1 doing the same thing. Now, what I'm basically doing here is I'm looking to see how much actual harmonic distortion shows up on the analyzer, in this case the DSA 815. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to compare these results to the Siglent signal generator down there that I compared earlier in an earlier video with a Rigol generator. Now, I found that this Siglent has excellent performance, so I'm going to set it up to output the same 10 kilohertz sine wave and take a look at its harmonic content. Now I've set up the Siglent generator to 10 kilohertz sine wave, and you'll see that at 10 kilohertz it's about -2 dB or dBm. At 20 kilohertz, about 50 dB down, -50, and at 30 megahertz, about -59 or -60 dBm. So the performance of the Analog Discovery, both the Analog Discovery 2 and the Analog Discovery 1, in terms of harmonics, appears to be essentially identical. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm now going to compare the Analog Discovery and the Siglent in terms of their harmonic content to this generator here, and then I'm going to measure the total harmonic distortion and the THD plus noise using the Keithley on this Rigol as well as the Siglent that you just saw. I've now set the Rigol 1022 to 10 kilohertz, and if you're interested in this generator or the Siglent, you might want to look at the video I did, or it's actually a set of videos comparing these two. So now let's look over here at the results on the spectrum analyzer, and you see remarkably consistent, -2.23 dBm, -2.3 dBm on the fundamental, -49 or 50, 51, so let's call it -50 on the second harmonic, and -60 or 61 on the third harmonic. So the Analog Discovery 1, the Analog Discovery 2, both compare very favorably with a couple of very modern signal generators. The Siglent that I looked at earlier only came out earlier this year, 2016. This Rigol that we're using over here is one that I have used for several years. It's the 1022, and it has a good reputation as well. So I still haven't resolved any issue with regard to noise. So now let's see what the Keithley thinks in terms of THD and THD plus noise for this Rigol, and then we'll do the Siglent, and at that point we'll call this video, or this bone, depending on your point of view, chewed long enough. On the Rigol, 1022, once again at 10 kilohertz. The measurement shows 0.012 or so, we'll call it 0.01% THD. And now we're going to change to THD plus noise. Once again, everything else remains the same. And you see we get 0.07 THD plus noise. So actually worse than the analog discovery. Now let's go and do the same thing using the Siglent. And now I've gone over to the Siglent generator, and this is THD. You'll notice that it's showing 0.004% THD, once again at 10 kilohertz. Now the only difference here, I have gone to a longer B&C cable. This is about a 6-foot cable. I've been using about 3-foot cables on the analog discovery and on the Rigol. So now let's go to THD plus noise. And you see we read about 0.01. But I really suspect that what's going on here is this has to do with the clock synchronization. In other words, the reason that the Keithley's internal generator shows up so good under this is that when you are synchronizing both the generator clock and the A to D converter clock, you eliminate jitter or phase differences between the clocks. And that is probably what is accounting for why that the Keithley measures so much better on its internal generator, and all external generators, their THD plus noise is quite a bit higher than their basic THD. So I still haven't gotten to a point where I'm going to leave this alone. I'm still going to try some filtering and some other things. But for right now, I think this is enough of an update. And like I say, I think I've probably chewed this bone too long. So I'll break off here and maybe move on to some other things. But I'm going to come back at some point in the future and revisit some of these issues about whether we can filter in a way that causes the Keithley to see its internal generator as roughly equivalent to some of these really good generators like that Rigol there and the Siglent that we looked at a little bit ago. Once again, hope you enjoyed it. Look forward to doing some more. Have a nice day.